Hello, folks. Welcome back to our next episode of the migrants problem and the New Deal effort that we as any government should do. And in particular, we're talking about what Indian government should do. And Madhu Yaski Garu was replying to the points raised by JP Garu that we should have voting rights to the individual in the place where they are staying, and ration cards, as well as the
education and health facilities to
health facilities that can be done immediately. And Madhu Yaski Garu was talking about, was completely agreeing about it, and hopefully he will ensure through his high offices in Congress to further this. Sir, your take and your please, the forum is yours.
While agreeing what most of what Mr. JP has said it, so the government need of the hour is one immediate task is to look after these migrant laborers who wanted to go and bring them back. And further package which is announced by the federal government, central government, the most of the package is the old schemes only. What reservations we have, some economists have the reservations about the whole package. But what they have to do immediately is to help these laborers cash transfer first. Second, in the rural areas, increase the working days of those under Manrega scheme to 200 days. Third point, immediately now with the economy slowly opening up and the lockdown has lifted, and start working on, once start your reopening, how the economy will be rebounds. The biggest challenge is unemployment. How the government going to address to that? The package which is announced by to the MSMEs, small industries, Nitin Gadkari himself has stating is minister in the government. It is not a big 3 lakh crores announced or 5 lakh crores announced to the MSMEs. Out of that 3 lakhs crores, this income tax returns, which the government is supposed to return to those companies. So that is not going to be the real package. So the government has to be serious about it. Learn from other developed countries, what you have just quoted, New Zealand to Denmark to Sweden to other countries, even Taiwan, a small country, how they coped up with this pandemic and come up within a plan to rebound the Indian economy. So to infuse those economy to rebounds, the government has to come up with a real package which will work and generate an employment. So mere talking Atmanirbhar or to local to vocal, it doesn't help, because you're the one who are taking away those PSUs and dilute, bringing even those Navaratnas has been diversified and inviting private investment into it. Defense sector you're opening up to the private sector, but you learn from other developed countries and start doing in it. So it's whatever Congress or other political parties or experts giving opinion. So Mr. Modi should take it into positive manner and not taking this as a political workmanship or criticizing the government. So they should be more open. So far, if you look at, take the example of FDR, what you have quoted. Right after he got re-elected, immediately convened the Congress and declared an economic package which touched upon every citizen of the country in those days. Here, the Lok Sabha is shut. No parliament is open for any discussion. No standing committee meetings are taking place. And no expert's opinion is taken. Just the meeting of the chief minister is not good enough. You should take opinion of other experts who are non-political people. And even if remotely, like if UK, if you look at it, Prime Minister survived COVID and they've started parliament debate where take the opinion of other parliamentarians. So the government should do that immediately and the package should work for the people.
Okay, sir. Sir, JP Garu, Madhu Garu has raised very good points that Lok Sabha has to be opened and Jan Dhan Yojana scheme accounts that are there could be used for the ration card, healthcare, and money transfer as well. As an identification card, they can use that account number for healthcare and other things. So in this context, the Supreme Court has also gave a very good judgment just a couple of hours ago, talking about it's Thursday, May 28th. So just a couple of hours ago, they gave a very good judgment saying that the migrants have to be deported to their respective places free of cost. I don't know why people are charging also. The other thing is to have proper documentation about why.
Pathetic, inhuman.
Yes, and documentation of.
Sorry to add one point. Being a lawyer, I was so disappointed. Supreme Court has to be told, Honorable Supreme Court, by 20 senior lawyers have written, and activists like true leaders like JP Garu have to raise a voice in social media and other areas where the court has to intervene. Unfortunately, the Honorable Supreme Court refused to intervene in the beginning. It's so pathetic.
Yes, I mean, sir, this comes to the lack of understanding of how to do the operations as such. So, JP Garu, what is your take? Like, why did such a massive failure happen? Was it the fault of IAS officers, or is it fault of politicians, or is your take, sir?
25 years, I have been shouting from rooftops about the governance collapse in India. We are going through motions in this country. There is some basic order in society, thanks to the steel frame that was institutionalized by the British and continued in independent India. But more important than that, thanks to the society itself, our society is generally peace-loving, our families are very strong, and there is a sense of dharma, right and wrong in society across religion and across all sections. It is these virtues that are somehow maintaining peace and a fair level of harmony in society. It's no thanks to government in India. In almost all core functions, this is not about this party or that party. In almost all core functions, the government's performance in India has been extremely inadequate and very patchy at best. If you take public order, justice, and rule of law, public order is okay because for the reasons I mentioned, partly because we have a strong structure, and partly because, much more important, because people maintain order on their own. But justice and rule of law, they are there in the Constitution. If this were 15 years ago, where was electricity in India? The broader point is that the governance process in India has been perilously close to collapse. We have been able to maintain the basics of government because there is order. There are regular elections. There is general peace prevailing. And luckily, because of growing population, hardworking people, they trying to know their market differentiation. By and large, stuck to certain policies of economic growth, etc. With all imperfections, there's been some moderate growth. Otherwise, governance has been in shambles. You can't do everything overnight, but at least sectorally. And the COVID crisis is an opportunity. Take the economic problem. For instance, the immigrant workers we're discussing. Now, this is not a crisis where merely the demand side recession is there. It is a self-induced coma and paralysis because in order to prevent the spread of infection, governments all over the world have simply stopped economic activity. And unless people again get back their jobs and their incomes, the economic cycle will not progress. And therefore, while welfare is required for a country like India in particular, the only sure response is be practical, be rational, and as quickly as possible, with all safeguards and precautions, bring back the economy to an even keel. And then say we controlled your COVID, it's not an achievement. Then why life? Yeah. And it's not that COVID is the only crisis in healthcare sector itself in the country.
True.
Every day, 2,000 children are dying below 5 years of age in India, every day, because of lack of healthcare. Every day, 800 people are dying of tuberculosis in India because of lack of proper healthcare. Every day, 50,000 new malaria cases are coming in. Every day, thousands of dengue cases are coming because of lack of mosquito control. And every year, 6 crore people are falling into poverty, descending into poverty. They were not poor in the beginning by our standards. But by the end of the year, 6 crore people are descending into poverty because of ill health. We are pretending that COVID is our crisis, And if COVID is addressed somehow, everything is normal. No, everything is not normal. We are in a perilous state. COVID is an opportunity to understand the nature of the crisis. At least let's wake up now. Just like in 1991, Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao and Dr. Manmohan Singh, they rose to the challenge because the crisis came. In the past, we committed mistakes. A crisis came, they converted that into opportunity. Fix the healthcare at a relatively low cost. You can't spend the way the Western countries are spending. We are spending only 1.1% of GDP.
Right, sir. So on the same point, Madhu Garu, so what is your take? Like, what can Congress do to help fix or change the crisis into an opportunity? What are your suggestions to your party leaders or planning, or the head? You are one of the planning persons in your party. So, what is your intake? What is your take on this?
The government of central government should more allocate funds to the states. Let states implement these programs. Everything controlling at centrally controlled will not work. Over a period, the central control has been diluted and given more power to the states. That has to begin in real terms. Second, this disinvestment into Navaratnas should be stopped. Earlier, if you look at those BHEL to ONGC to HAL, whereas government providing employment and also using those products for the development of the country. I personally, and I think party also, oppose this disinvestment into the Navaratnas at least. If not all PSUs, disinvestment is taking place. Thirdly, health, and we are completely lacking in healthcare sector. The spending in health and education is still very low. While I was in Parliament also was demanding from our own government at that point of time to increase more funds to the healthcare sector. Your rural health mission has started in those days, but here you have Ayush and other programs this current government has started, but still is minimal. If you look at example of Telangana, the separate state was fought and the government has promised the new hospitals in Hyderabad itself. Still, during the combined state, it is this most specialty, biggest hospital as Usmania and Gandhi Hospital. Today, only the Gandhi Hospital is treating these COVID patients. We have given thousands of crores of worth of land to the Apollo, to other hospitals. None of these private hospitals are coming to the rescue to save the people. So the health sector has to be implemented, more funds to be allocated. So when I was in Parliament, I was started this diabetic camps in rural areas. My wife was endocrinologist. So health and education is a key sector. As JP Garu rightly pointed out, the number one cause for poor people, middle class, lower middle class people getting into debt because of the cost on health and education. The various issues, right from malnutrition, children dying because of malnutrition, regular viral fevers, people are dying. Going to the private hospitals and cost is so much, so the people are getting into the debt. So the government has to, like if you look at Prakash Garu, Canada to other countries, even UK, the government still provides so much healthcare, free healthcare to the people. So India, over a period, I'm not critical about my government or this government, but we failed to address health and education. Population, and in the terms of increasing the population, we have failed to provide government spending in education and health sector. So this biggest opportunity to where government has to take note of it, health and education infrastructure money to be infused, that also create employment, and it also saves the people's lakhs of their hard-earned money on these sectors.
True. So I know that past mistakes. There have been innumerable number of mistakes that the governments have done, in spite of well-intentioned people raising the kind of gaps or loose points that are there or holes in the system. So going forward, how do what should let me put it this way, more bluntly, what will Congress governments do and to improve this situation? You also have governments in Rajasthan and other places. So what from your perspective would you suggest and would you take as a points from these and
See,
help
none of the state government can survive without the central government help. Under the GST, the money is to be refunded by the central government, which states have so far not been refunded. Over 5 lakhs crores of GST refunds have been pending. So this central government has to immediately give the money to the states to spend. Whether it is Congress government or BJP government, without the central government funding this health and education sector, which comes under state purview, it's not going to.
So did you raise these points? Like, did the governments come out saying that, okay, this is the number of money that we need and we are going to allocate this much money to healthcare and the center is stopping us from serving these healthcare? These kind of things have not come into the paper actually.
To this, Mr. Rahul Gandhi keep mentioning these points, and unfortunately these to be discussed in the parliament, but parliament is shut. Parliament is, you can do when we're doing Zoom debate here on instead of live TV, the parliament like in UK and other countries are functioning. That can be done same thing there also. So but unfortunately the problem with Mr. Modi is he doesn't take suggestions from anyone. There's no opposition parties leaders meeting. They should have called for a national meeting with, or at least this instead of their own chief minister, or they could
agreed
have a
that
call meeting with the other political parties.
Agreed.
It's a national crisis. It's not crisis created by anyone. It's a national crisis, and everyone should work together.
Agreed. So, but you also have a bully pulpit. The media is your bully pulpit. The bully pulpit for PM is the parliament, but you have a bully pulpit of the media, and you could say a exact pinpoint that, okay, this much amount of money is needed for this particular task, this much amount is needed for this task. So at least you release those things. And if you repeat them quite often, then people will start questioning. So maybe Congress has to keep more interacting with these issues.
So you're fortunate you're going on online so that your media and house can function. Unfortunately, and media under threat in India right now. Nobody can question. No public, no press conference is taking place. If anyone questions the chief minister, prime minister will be thrown out, or the TV will be banned or barred. You see the example of how a small reporter of CBS questioning the President Trump, when he said a Chinese origin reporter asking a question, and President Trump said, "Go and ask China." She said, "Why are you pointing me out?"
Right.
Unfortunately, India is currently under big threat. As one big point I would like to point out here, as JP rightly said it, the judicial reforms has to be taking place. Being a lawyer, I'm very sad to see the late intervention of the Honorable Supreme Court itself. Initially, they refused to even pass any order. This could have been avoided if Honorable Supreme Court could have ordered the same thing 2 months ago, of lakhs of crores of migrant labor's flight. So many people have died, and look at those scenes, which is heart-wrenching. So what Congress are, it's not the question of Congress, Prakash. It is the media under threat. Nobody is dare to question the government. Not within his own party, nobody can raise a questions. So this is not healthy democracy. It's not.
You can always use us. You can always use our media. We can always be open for you.
Okay, my quick point as lawyer and as a public person, the electoral reforms, judicial reforms, administrative reforms has to be implemented or come into force in India, which is very need of the hour. That will change the. Initially, you asked, is it because of the IAS officers or is it because of the red tapeism, which is another cause of implementation of the problem in India.
Right.
So unless these to be made independently functional and these reforms taking place, as we both agree, me and JP Garu, how electoral become much more corrupt now. For us to fight next election is getting almost impossible. So unless these electoral reforms comes and these corrupt nexus between the political to judiciary to administration, or even now the media also, most of the politicians or industrial houses are owning the media. There's no independent media left now. And government is misutilizing the CBI to other forces. So these reforms has to be come so that the healthy, we call largest democracy doesn't mean if real democratic principles is not implemented.
I agree to a large extent. This is where a common person like me and thinkers and leaders, there is a big gap in our perspective, because we live on day-to-day basis, and the steps or the suggestions are long-term. These reforms don't happen over a day, but we have to live today and tomorrow. So on a short-term basis, in immediate basis, how would you think about pressurizing the government in taking up the steps that JP Garu and you have come up together? These are your plans. So how do you
Congress has started a campaign of Speak Up India. We are asking our citizens to speak up and ask the government. First and most immediate relief is to get those cash transfer into Jan Dhan accounts of these poorer people. Transfer of ration is very important, and then voting right, and that is also very critical. Then only the 30% of the India's population below poverty level, their livelihood will change. And providing free education and health in urban sector, when these poor laborers going to come to the cities and work, without them, none of the urban infrastructure projects will take place. You can't build the road, you can't build any dams, or you can't build any housing in the urban areas without this labor force coming into the cities. And that has to be addressed immediately. And as he rightly pointed out, like the money transfer, the stimulus package to the small and medium industry, that has to come. Not giving as a loan, give them subsidy to start. Where bigger companies, you're waiving of lakhs of crores to the bigger companies. Over 15 lakhs crores has been waived off. That doesn't created any employment, and it is taken taxpayers' money into task. So the medium and small sector has to be supported by giving a package, not as a loan. That has to come from the central government.
Right.
And second, as we said it, and I'm sure you also agree because it is its experience, the states, you have to, dilute the administrative powers. So completely controlling from center, it's not going to work. Mr. Modi was a chief minister. Now he's a prime minister. When he was chief minister, what he was demanding, if he can implement his own demands, asking from central government to do it, you see the sea change.
So, sir, JP Garu, I need your intervention here, that the devolution of power is not there, and the media is being pressurized into doing things that are untruthful or infactual, and the freedom of speech is in jeopardy. What is your take on how media can save itself? Because a free media is going to be, it's like a fourth pillar, and without the free media, people or the country will not function as it should. So how should
certainly there is far too much of centralization in our country under every party, and particularly now because there is a very strong and stable government with two successive majority governments for a single party in Delhi, with a strong and powerful and charismatic leader. whose word is law in his party and his cabinet. So in such a situation, given Indian conditions, there's enormous centralization and there are not enough voices, not enough of debate. That's understood. There are two broad things. The first is, as a general principle, as Madhu said quite rightly, India cannot progress. Not only cannot survive, but cannot progress unless power is devolved to the states and local governments as much as is humanly possible. Now, union to state, there has been significant progress in India over the past 30 years. It was not there before. Even 1980s saw very bad trends, but post-1980s, after economic reform, there has been some maturation of federalism. But the third tier of governments have been always very weak. Notwithstanding 73rd, 74th amendments, notwithstanding governments, successive governments' pious pronouncements, we have made our third tier governments inconsequential.
Third tier meaning panchayats and mayoral.
The panchayats, municipalities and cities, the local governments, because that is the key. Take China. China is an autocratic country, a single party country. But Chinese cities, Chinese counties are all powerful. The leaders of the local governments in China, they're all powerful. While overall policy is set by the federal government of China, the execution is in Shanghai, it's in Beijing, it's in Wuhan, it's in Chengdu, it's in some other county. And they have real power, real power. Then the broad policy direction, they actually execute. It is a pity that democratic India has far more centralization than autocratic China. This is something that our governments and political parties and media have not grasped. That's why I'm urging, at least now let's take this opportunity to look at big cities. Even if you can't change everything, at least urban governance, bigger cities, if you start changing, then that example will spread to the rest of the country. The second part is, I think the differences between parties are exaggerated in India. In a broad sense, economic policy and other policy perspectives, there is not that much to choose between governments. But even what is already stated and accepted is not always implemented. Dr. Manmohan Singh's government has, for instance, come up with a very sensible policy on agricultural markets. After a fierce debate in the country, the government came up with a policy to allow retail chains in India. Because unless the market chain is compressed, the distance between the producer, the farmer, and the consumer is reduced. Unless these too many intermediaries are removed, you cannot improve the value chain in agriculture. From grading, packaging, transport, storage, processing, retailing, and finding export markets. It's an absolutely vital policy. The government came up with an extremely lucid, well thought out document on the subject. What happened after 10 years? Nothing. Nothing. See, if you simply announce policies, nothing happens. To announce one rational policy, it takes 10 years, and nothing happens for 10 years after that, then the country does not progress. China embarked on economic reform in 1978. Once they have understood that their old model of state control, lack of competition, no economic freedom, and over-centralization was a disaster, they systematically and assiduously went about reforming, and once they said something, they implemented it. There's no gap between saying, deciding, and executing. In India, you say one thing.
Here, one. Sorry to interject. For lack of time. So there is, like Madhu Yaskigar was saying about the pressure on the media and the infactual data being pushed through. How do a common person, a media person, or a common person?
Certainly, with a strong personality. You know, Mr. L.K. Advani, after emergency, in a very memorable speech, he said, talking to journalists, when you're only asked to bend during emergency, you prefer to crawl. So we are in a country where the cravenness, the cringing, the obsequiousness, the prostration before power is endemic. So when the leaders demand a little bit, many in our society do a lot more. The bureaucracy, the media, the civil society, the political class, that is the nature of it. We are a very leadership-driven country. But while there are some of these trends which are not very satisfactory, I don't think there's a tremendous problem because fundamentally our freedoms are intact. Fundamentally, our constitutional institutions, the courts and other authorities are intact. Therefore, these distortions can be easily overcome. The real challenge is, how do we move forward? On the one hand, the government has a priceless opportunity. For the first time in 40 years, never before, Indira Gandhi's government elected in 1971 was the last government elected for the second term in succession with a single party majority.
Right.
And after that, this is the first time, almost 50 years later. Now it's a priceless, with a strong leader and trusted leader. Good, bad, ugly. You may like Modi, you may not like Modi. But he is widely respected and trusted in India, which is an asset if you use it wisely. Therefore, the government can push many things. If Mr. Modi decides that Indian economic transformation must take place, governance transformation must take place, political transformation must take place, there is no real obstacle.
But he is not thinking is what Madhu Garu is saying.
Nor the cabinet, nor society will oppose. No, therefore, no, that is for us to persuade. The point is, there is no real obstacle. Let's not pretend that these are insurmountable problems. That's what I make.
So Modi can change his mind. That's what you're saying.
What does Congress have to lose? What does Congress have to lose? You see, Mark Twain said once, nothing concentrates the mind more beautifully than the knowledge that you only have 15 days to live. When you're anyway in crisis, existential crisis of the party, a great party, a party of freedom struggle, a party that really built much of India of freedom, institutions of freedom, or democracy, or constitution, post-independence, good, bad, ugly. We did some good things, we did some bad things. The food self-sufficiency was a great achievement. The license control was a disaster. So both good and bad, it's our inheritance. Then 1991 reform is a good thing. Now, with all this, Congress now has an opportunity to imagine. You may not have political power adequately, but nobody stops you from imagining and articulating a very clear-headed vision based on evidence and logic, and making it a persuasive thing, becoming a movement. You fight your elections, but think of yourselves as a movement. Congress still has a great opportunity and need. India needs Congress, India needs BJP. The great parties cannot be wished away no matter what you want. And they don't really differ that much. For electoral purposes, they all try to say they're radically different. Actually, they are not. We must not judge them by their speeches, but their actions, and recognize where we have done well, where we have done wrong. If I were in Congress, I would urge the party to aggressively, even as a citizen, I would urge the party to aggressively look at the past record, own the good things, and also acknowledge the bad things. Forget temporary political expedience. Say, does the Congress party have the imagination? Does the BJP have the courage to do what they are empowered by the people of India to do? It is the courage of a party in power which has the opportunity, and it is the imagination of the party without power which has the legacy and history that determines the future. I hope that they will both rise up to that, instead of this endemic squabbles and shouting at each other and fighting at each other. I don't really take party differences very seriously.
Okay, awesome, sir. So Madhu Garu, as JP Garu is saying, you can change the mind of Modi by constantly imagining and reimagining yourself and your party, and using the media as a bully pulpit. And from his own words, the freedom is still intact. So with this, sir, we come to the conclusion. We still have 2 minutes of time. So if anyone wants to take 1 minute each.
Quickly, I would like to acknowledge and respect Mr. JP what has said about a valuable advice to the Congress party. I will definitely take it up this with Mr. Rahul Gandhi, and he is very sincere, honest leader, and has rightly pointed out, no democracy can function without a strong opposition. This is where we reached out to the parties, and Mr. Vajpayee himself has said it, that his second life he got it because of Rajiv Gandhi sent him for a treatment, making him the leader of the India's delegation to the UN. So what I quickly point out here is a strong opposition is needed for a healthy democracy to function. Congress party will play its role as a responsible opposition party and take advice. And Mr. Gandhi has started taking advices from leaders like JP and other experts into the health and economic experts, and taking their advice and started a discussion and dialogue with them. The Speak Up India is a campaign launched by Congress Party and with every Indian citizen, cutting across political differences. Ask the current government. Yes, we are with the government for efforts that are taken up by the Modi to face this pandemic and win over on against this virus. And we are with the government to support with a constructive suggestions raising as a responsible opposition party.
Sir, JP Garu, so Madhu Garu is saying that he will take up your suggestions to Rahul Gandhi. So if Rahul Gandhi asks, will you help him?
Oh, by all means. Modi, Rahul Gandhi, or KCR, or Jagan, doesn't matter who it is, this is our country. Political parties are platforms for people's participation in public life. That's all. Beyond that, we all love our country. We all are for the same constitutional goals. Politics, in power or out of power. Of those out of power is a very dangerous thing in a democracy. I entirely agree with Mathu. And we'll have to sit with all these parties and make this accommodation, this consensus possible and strengthen the national resolve. Let me conclude briefly with two very quick points. There is no problem or challenge that cannot be overcome by a rational, systematic approach to it and by building a kind of framework that is required. We all know what needs to be done. Education, in healthcare, in basic infrastructure, in job creation, in economic liberalization, agriculture. It's not rocket science. We have enough of experience in our own country and experience elsewhere. We have affordable, practical, acceptable solutions. The parties, at least in this crisis time, must bury the hatchet, forget petty politics because there are no serious elections around the corner. We might as well look at the country and its future. As Jawaharlal Nehru said, if India loses, then who wins? If India wins, then who loses? Now, this is the time when we should really bring that kind of perspective to the table. The second is, we have immense opportunity. Post 1991, many Indians and lovers of India abroad hope that India will fulfill her true potential and become a great economic giant and a great stable society to bring order and harmony to the rest of the world. A great example. While we have done some things right, I think in a large measure, our potential remains unfulfilled. Now, a country of our size, with mass unemployment, every year we're adding 13 million people to the job market in the country. There is still mass poverty. And this whole COVID crisis and its aftermath in the form of the immigrant workers showed how perilously close to starvation a significant section of our hardworking people are. Now, this is not a situation we should be comfortable with. We cannot improve this by business as usual. We have to utilize this crisis as an opportunity. Paul Romer, a distinguished economist, said, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. This is an opportunity. As you said rightly, this crisis is not created by any human being. It is imposed on us, on all of us as a global community. Now, wisdom demands we convert that into an opportunity and push forward and transform the country. I think there is a tantalizing opportunity. There's a great opportunity despite many missed chances before. If only we bury the hatchet, come together, and in a practical, sensible manner, come up with affordable and acceptable and democratic solutions, really transform the lives of the millions of people. And I hope that this discussion and many discussions in the drawing rooms of India and in the media will go beyond the political pyrotechnics, the polarization, the abuse, the rhetoric, and look at what needs to be done by all of us together as a country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. We look forward for more interaction with you. Thank you so much.